Next, we're going to talk about the proper way to bridle your horse. We've softened his poll, we've softened his jaw, and now what we're going to do is we're going to get him familiar with our hands around his face, and we're going to get him familiar with just putting the bit in and out of his mouth. And what I like to do is, when I'm first working with a horse, just get him to where, see how Petey, he's really at peace with me being around his head. You know, he's not sensitive about my hands, and he's trusting me. He's not afraid of me, okay? And that's a very big thing to accomplish right there. Some horses, that takes a little time because they've been ear twitched, or they've been twitched somewhere else, or somebody's got in a fuss with them, putting a big old bit in their mouth that pinched them or something, or inappropriate bitting, where, you know, when they put the bridle on, they pulled it over his ears and hurt his ears and so on, where, you know, you got to untangle all that, okay? So one thing that's really nice to do is I get my rope and I simulate that rope just as the bit, okay? And I let him hold that rope in his hand, and then I take it like this and give a little pressure back and see how he gave me his nose real nice, okay? Well, if he were to throw that nose forward, or he to give me brace in that procedure, tells me I'm not ready for the bit, okay? We got to soften him up a little more. So then I let it drop out, and then I let it come back up in, just like that. Nice soft rope, doesn't hurt. He's feeling good about it, okay? So what I don't want to do is just ram some big old cold bit in his mouth the first time and get it to where he's not feeling good about it, okay? So as you can see, he feels very confident with something in his mouth, okay? This is the half-breed bridle I showed you earlier, okay? And I'm going to take that and I'm going to loosen that bridle probably bigger than it needs to be, because I want it to go over his nose and go over his ears softly, okay? So what I'm going to do is I've got my little holder here, and I leave this holder on because I don't want him dribbling around and being ornery while I'm working with him. I want him to hold his head still, okay? And I want him to put his face right into that bridle. That's why he's reaching over here. He's used to this. You know, they used to always say, well, we can tell the horses Ted's worked with because they kind of open their mouth up when you walk by with a bridle. But I've always taken great pride in that. I want my horses to bridle very softly. When I get a new horse, that always tells me a lot about where he came from, and it tells me a lot about the horse. So as I bridle him, I'm going to take my hand, my right hand, and go between his ears. I'm going to get my bridle like this. I'm going to come underneath like this. Come right up in, just like that. Okay? Come over his ear, far ear first. I'm going to take this ear forward. Okay? I'm going to organize his hair, his mane. Okay? Softly. Everything's in order. Okay? Now, I'm going to adjust his bridle to where I used to adjust these where I had a wrinkle in the corner of his mouth. But anymore, what I want to do is I just want it in the corner of his mouth, because if you've got a wrinkle, it kind of makes me think that you're riding around with your foot on the brake a little bit. It needs to mean something when you give him pressure, okay? So I'm going to adjust his bridle. Okay. I'm going to buckle his throat latch like this, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just see how things work, okay? Okay. I'm going to ask him for some lateral flexion. Just standing here, okay? And if I can't get that standing on the ground, I'm sure not going to get it on his back. See there how he gives me his jaws so nice, okay? That's a good place to start. If I get around a horse and he won't work like this on the ground, it tells me I've got to do my homework a little bit before we get on his back, okay? But if you'll see how this bridle works, I really like these where you see how when I give him See how that rope right there touches his nose? Well, it's the same signal as this halter did when I work him with the halter, okay? So I think that it's important that if you did have to take a hold of him, or if he did act up, I don't want you pulling on those reins and just putting pressure on the bit at first. It's nice to have this here to support his mouth and not give him any trauma in his mouth when he's young and tender. Okay? So now we're going to take the bridle off, which is just as important. Okay? I'm going to hook the throat latch. Okay? I'm going to organize my reins. I'm going to come off this ear, and I'm going to drop it on his terms. Okay? Drop it, Petey. Come on, Petey. Okay. And then when I go to rebridle, I want him to just take it and accept it in his mouth very willingly, just like that. And when I drop it out, I don't want to bang on his teeth. I want to just drop it out, just like this. Just like that. And I want him to do it, drop that bit on his own terms. I don't want to make it to where he drops that bit and it hits his teeth and it makes it unpleasant. Now, as we go along, we'll go over this more, but I think it's important that we address this now so you understand how we correlate everything here to something later, okay? So we started here with the rope, and as you can see, Petey wants the bit in his mouth. He's reaching over here trying to put it in his mouth. We'll see, that's what we want. We want him to be enthusiastic about what we're doing. Okay, so now in our next videos, what we're going to talk about is how to lead your horse, and then on the next one, I think we'll talk about how to back your horse. Thank you.